Preneed sales. We have, luckily for a while, been filling out our paperwork online anyway. We use Adobe Sign, and so we're able to have anyone fill out their paperwork online. It actually ends up being a time saver, which is why we use it primarily to begin with. For now, what we're encouraging people, we're not doing any in-person meetings, not at all. Not for site selection, not for tours. We're encouraging folks who are able-bodied to come out on their own and tour the site, because I don't know about you all, but it's like the pandemic is making death really real for a lot of people. And we're getting a lot of people who have maybe been to the sanctuary before, or maybe they've heard about us and they're like, we want to reserve a spot. So what our process is one, it's important if they've never been there that they have to go there, because you have to experience the land and make sure it resonates. I'm offering Zoom calls for anybody to do the things that I would normally do on a guided tour. So talk to them about, the background of our project, what conservation burial means, answer all their questions and answers. We have a digital map, so I've actually been sharing my screen and kind of walking them through the map, almost like if I was giving them the tour, to point out certain things. And then in terms of the contract itself, obviously all of us operate differently. Our pricing is based on habitat. So what we're doing is having folks choose the habitat that they want for now. We're signing the paperwork. We're saying that later, when we're on the other side of the pandemic, they can come out and actually pick their spot, because we don't work on a grid system. If you work on a grid system, that might not be relevant for you. We allow folks to pick their spot. Even if you have a grid system, I'm sure you let people pick their spots. But anyway, you get my point. So we're able to do the paperwork, set up payment. We offer a payment plan or full payment. So that's what we're doing. And I don't want to take all the time telling you guys what I'm doing. So before we move on to the burial process, is there any questions or things that people want to contribute in terms of the pre-need process? Are we good to go?
This is Shep Farley, by the way. Everything you said is exactly what we've instituted as well. We've closed our building off completely to the public, except for the use of the downstairs restaurant.
That's great. I mean, that's the thing right now is, and I think this is where this is going to get challenging, is that it really is one of our responsibilities to take care of people and keep them safe. And it's hard when someone is grieving. We all know, because we've been there, we've held space for people who are there, and we've been there ourselves. It's hard to be rational when you're feeling a lot of emotional feelings. And so that's where I think starting to talk about services and that part is going to be really helpful. So right now for us, we are limiting services to 5 people. Even though the CDC is recommending 10 or less, we personally made the decision to limit it to 5 or less. We're still on the fence. We haven't had a COVID death that we've handled yet, but we're still on the fence. And I'm guessing, to be honest, we'll probably make a decision tomorrow that we may not allow anyone to be present, because it's not the body that we're concerned about. It's the living people. They're the potential vectors, and it's heartbreaking, and it's of course not what anyone wants. We all know we do this because we feel in our hearts how beautiful this type of burial is, but it's putting people at risk. And so we probably personally are not going to allow people to be present. So in terms of lowering the body, what we've decided to do is to do that with the funeral home versus having the family help. The funeral home will have the personal protection equipment. Obviously, when you're lowering a body, you're shoulder to shoulder, you're relatively close. You're literally facing another person, oftentimes very, very close. And so in that scenario, we would have a mask on. We would be wearing gloves, as would the funeral home folks. And so we'll do that prior to the family coming to the gravesite. We don't think it's going to be such a great experience for folks to watch that. And of course, like if somebody really wanted to watch that, we, would never, if people actually really want to watch that, I'm sure we would accommodate that. We actually haven't had a burial since this has happened. We've had a lot of people who've been cremated, and of course we're going to postpone those burial services. So we actually haven't had to deal with this yet. And in terms of closing the grave, what we've personally decided to do is me and our land steward will each have our own shovel, and we'll have a shovel or two designated to the attendees. And we're going to still maintain social distancing, 6 feet, have one person come at a time. I actually feel comfortable asking the family if they have their own shovel and they want to bring it. There's a way you can frame that where you're not demanding that they do. We'll still have shovels available for them, but in the event that they use our shovels, we're going to disinfect them in between usage. I personally think that families that are cohabitating, we don't have to be as strict with them, because they're already cohabitating and they're not maintaining 6 foot distance. They're, you know, and that's personally, it's just my opinion. I think that's their right to decide if they're cohabitating with each other. But y'all can of course, you know, maintain your own standards. So that's what we're doing, and would love to hear other people's input and feedback and thoughts. So I'm going to open it up to anybody who wants to jump in.
You have some questions on chat. You can ask those people.
Okay.
You want to open that up and ask them to ask their questions?
Okay, so Kathy, should I have Kathy read it versus me read it? Kathy, will you ask your question?
Oops. Hello. I know that you said that the CDC recommends 10 and that you're doing 5 or less, I think you had said.
Yeah.
My question is, I know that it's recommendation or a guideline, but has anyone received a state mandate saying that it's 10? Right now, New York State is saying 50 or less.
Ours is 50 or less too, and I was like, are you serious?
Exactly our problem.
How about Jody? Can you jump in on that?
Yeah, so I show up as Holly on the screen, but I'm Jody from White Eagle Memorial Preserve in Goldendale, Washington. And our governor had initially said that we were going to be limited to direct burials only. And that in some ways was a relief. It was heartbreaking, but it was a relief. And this last weekend, they loosened that requirement, and now it just says immediate family only, which is again questionable. What does that mean? Who considers themselves to be immediate family only? We are at this point looking at 10 people or less, and I'm just trying to do as much front loading of this. We have to be really strict with how many people, and you know, and offering family members to video and share later, and trying to be as welcoming and also not welcoming as possible. I think there's the state mandate, and then there's the best practices, and as much as people are able to articulate to their families that we're really trying to hold a safer standard than what the state may say.
Thank you, Jody.
That's a great point.
Yeah. The next question was from Pete. Pete, do you want to read your question? The one about the bodies being, I may as well just say it for you if I do that. What's that?
Am I on now?
Yeah.
One of our regular people who runs our barn, she is a physician's assistant at a veterans hospital, and they were told today that coronavirus bodies are actually contagious for up to 5 days, which means you can't do a home funeral without personal protective equipment, I suppose, if that turns out to be true. But there's so many things we hear, and that's a secondhand when I've talked to 3 funeral directors today, and I haven't confirmed that they've heard it. So anybody else heard that?
Yeah, Pete, I'd like to take that one because I'm actually working with funeral directors right now to put together a video for families so that they know what to do if they end up with dead bodies in their house that they hadn't planned on, and pick up or removal takes too long. So we've been in very close contact with the CDC and the NFDA about what their recommendations are, and also the World Health Organization today. All 3 came out with some new information about this. And essentially, it's not that the bodies themselves are contagious. The issue is that the virus can last up to 5 days in the lungs. So what we have to do is cover the mouth, put a mask or a kerchief or something over the mouth and nose, and do the very best we can not to move the body unnecessarily in order to avoid any compression of the chest for, that would cause any of those droplets to be moved. Home funeral families are already going to have that person in their home. They were already dealing with them. They need to just continue to use those universal precautions they were already using. It's that simple. This isn't a matter of suddenly bodies becoming contagious and dangerous. So that's a distinction I know that a lot of people can't, make, but we need to do the best we can to make it very clear that the bodies that are coming to our cemeteries are safe to bury. They're safe to move. They're safe to bury.
Yeah, and I know that we're going to be sharing resources. The video that Lee and other folks from the National Home Funeral Alliance did, I thought was very, very informative and helpful. It's more geared towards death midwives, but still lots of good information. And Caitlin Doty did a video recently as well, and they're both really helpful. So we'll share those too. Let's see, let me do a quick time check. So we have about 5 minutes. I know this is really quick, but at least something's better than nothing. So 5 minutes left on this particular topic. Did other people have things that they wanted to chime in with? Just about what you all are doing to keep everyone, your staff and guests safe? I guess, you know what? Well, actually, we can do that at the end in terms of rituals. I was going to talk about live streaming, but I think we can save that for the third topic, which is about ritual and meaning. So
can I get in for 1 second here?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Jay Lyons from Southwood Jewish Cemetery. So a lot of cemeteries in general down here in South Florida have been limiting to some number, 5 people, 10 people, whatever the number might be. The approach that we took is that we said immediate family only. And so far we've had far fewer than 10 people at any funeral. A lot of times immediate family can't travel. So if you say 10 people, you're going to have 10 people, right? And if you say immediate family, you're not necessarily checking IDs. This person is a cousin. That's not immediate family, that type of thing. But on the other hand, when 70 people show up, then you have your cover to be able to say, look, people need to stay on the driveway or in their cars or something like that. But from what we've experienced, and we've had several funerals in the last 2 weeks, families are okay hearing immediate family only, times being what they are. And like I said, we've done better that way in the sense that we've had fewer people, which means that our own people are exposed to fewer people and therefore fewer hazards.
That makes sense. That's good. Has anyone yet experienced pushback? Because I have to say, it's one of the things that makes me a little bit anxious is people not getting it. And that's just a fear I'm projecting because we haven't experienced that yet. But I'm curious for any of you who have had burials in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, Freddie.
So this is an email that I have sitting in my email right now that I have not answered. And this is a medical person at University of Florida Hospital Shands who apparently has a family member that has COVID-19 virus. And she saw our policy for doing COVID-19 folks that have died with the virus. Our policy is different than if we're just doing a burial. And that difference is that right now it states that, I think like you said, Cassie, is that we just do it and there's nobody there except our staff and possibly the funeral director. And her very sincere question and situation is that apparently she has this family member who may not die at all, but they're anticipating that if he does, she's asking she's saying she sees the situation firsthand and that for his wife to be able just to, after we've lowered the body, for us to get out of the way and for her to come in and be able to put a handful of earth in the grave, she says will make all the difference in the world. So, you know, it provided for me, like I haven't answered her yet, because, you know, every situation is so different. And, you know, you have this policy, but then you have all these people that have different situations. And, you know, to me, I would very seriously consider finding a way to provide that for her. But at the same time, I would have a number of questions, like, you know, would they be willing to wait for 2 weeks to have the burial? That's one thing that often is a possibility for this, that automatically reduces risk, is just to wait some time. But anyway, I mostly just wanted to share it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about it yet, but to me, you know, I felt what she was feeling, compassionate wise, for this lady. And she spelled it out much better than me. But anyway, I just wanted to share it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's exactly the sort of thing. It's like my heart just breaks when I hear that. And of course, I naturally I would be like you, I would want to find a way to make that happen.
Yep.
So, somebody's about to say something? Because we're about to wrap up this part of the topic, the last thing I'm going to just say really quick is that what we're going to do is actually put our guidelines, publish them on our website, and then also share it through a newsletter through everyone who's ever purchased a spot with us. I immensely prepare people for what could happen. Like, I feel like it's a good thing to just kind of, and Freddie, it was y'all email that I was like, yes, this is like a good idea. Just get people mentally prepared for like what the scenario could look like. And I'm making sure to emphasize that the landscape is changing daily, and that what we're stating right now might not be the case in a week. So right now it's 5 guests. Next week, who knows? The mandates could change. The CDC recommendations could change. But I do think it's helpful to mentally prepare people for that. And before we switch, I'm just gonna, let's see, actually, let me do a time check. For Pete's question about the mass graves, it's actually perfect, because the next topic has to do with mass fatalities. How do we prepare and meet the need? And just to remind you, I know Lee already said this, but you can keep writing your questions. We will find a way to address the ones that don't get answered. So let's see, Pete said, we've had a couple of people who are afraid we can't handle all the deaths and they might be put in a mass grave. I actually think Caitlin, Lee, have you seen Caitlin Doty's video about this?
No.
It's really good, and it addresses mass graves. And I think that if you do decide to do something like a letter or an email, well, I guess, sorry, I'm just like processing while I speak. Has anyone else had a similar question raised with you? I'm just curious. Yeah, Jody? Because that could be something that could be helpful to go, if you do end up sending out a newsletter to your folks or publishing something on your website, just to preemptively address that fear.
I'm curious to know what people are thinking about in their own cemeteries.
Yeah.
Jody, yeah.
Yeah, we were approached with that question. One of our staff members works also as an emergency services person for our local hospital, and so they were having worst case scenario conversations and trying to identify who the funeral homes and burial grounds in the area might be as resources. So we currently have a number of sites that are prepared ahead of time, and like to prepare sites by hand, but that's obviously in a case of increased frequency not going to be as possible. So we're discussing the potential to bring our small backhoe out to an area that's less pristine, if you will, in the cemetery grounds, and to be able to respond more quickly using lightly more mechanized grave prep options. I think that notion of a large hole that multiple bodies go into is really terrifying for people, and that's not a way forward. But the idea of being prepared ahead of time to be able to handle increased frequency of burial. I think that's a peace of mind place, both for hospital admin and for families and general public.
You know what that brings to mind for me? I'm curious if other people have talked about this in their cemeteries, is that if you have to prepare ahead of time, you're preparing grave space ahead of time, then that may mean that you're going to have to insist that people are buried in the graves that are available, not in the graves that they've chosen. How are you going to cope with that?
Can you call it communal? I'm sorry, I can't raise my hand. This is Andrea, but in the pet world, we call it communal, and not so the mass grave idea, more communal grave. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Is that Lee? No, I actually haven't considered that. So when we are also going to be preparing 5, just same thing, like just to have the peace of mind that there's just that space is there. I personally we're imagining them at need people who don't already have a space with us, because like what Jody said, we were already wanting to get a tractor anyway to help maintain our trails. And so we went ahead, we're financing it, and we're getting a backhoe attachment. We normally dig all of our graves by hand, but exactly like Jody was saying, there might be a point in time where that's just not possible. And we're just we can only do the best that we can do. And that's where we have to remind ourselves is we can only do the best we can do. And so, yeah, I wasn't personally, that's not, we were just going to allocate those 5 spaces for people who didn't already have a spot picked out. What about other folks?
I'll go. Foxfield, we have 3 different sections of our cemetery. We have 2 sections that are being restored to tallgrass prairie meadow, and we have 1 section that is being reforested. Our intention is to, if we get to the point where we are having that kind of demand and that kind of frequency of burial, we're going to assign specific areas within the cemetery, and we're going to start burying sequentially where we do not do that right now. We are plotted off fully, and we allow families to choose their plot locations. If we get to the point where we need to suspend that, we will be burying sequentially in one of those 3 areas.
Can you clarify what that means, Sarah? That's actually a new concept for me.
So instead of clearing multiple locations around the cemetery, we're going to just bury in one area.
And would it literally be sequential, like this grave, then this grave, then this grave?
My hope is that by clearing one specific area, we'll be able to perhaps save the adjacent plot for a partner.
Right.
So we may skip plots, but for the time being, that's kind of what our plan is moving forward.
And has anyone had any thought about how this would affect burial density? Because, you know, I know for conservation burial grounds, for example, the standard right now is 300 bodies, you know, full body burials per acre. For natural burial ground, it's 500. Literally just had this thought for the first time right now. So I'm just curious if anyone has thought about this. Are you going to kind of, yeah, do you know what I'm saying? Or would you make it so that the people were closer in a situation where we're getting inundated with lots of burials at one time?
I think we're going to avoid changing our burial density in any way. We have plenty of plots. I mean, we have about we've got about 3,000 out there. For us, because we are a restoration site, we don't have the same issues that Jody does about worrying about a pristine section of our cemetery. So I'm not as concerned about clearing space. I'm not as concerned about clearing space as I am about conserving time and moving moving quickly to meet demand.
That makes sense.
That's good. I'm wondering, Cassie, if Robin could speak.
Hi. Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, sorry. So yeah, I'm out in Rhode Island. We have a very, very small natural burial ground. It's Prudence Memorial Park. I actually met with one of our contractors who digs graves. I've yet to bury anybody, by the way, at all yet. So this is scaring the pants off me. But anyway, we have individuals can select one of 4 areas, but then you literally are placed in the adjacent location to the last person that was buried in that section of the park. We did figure out a way that we could potentially do it to reserve an adjacent space next to everybody in the event that their a loved one would like to be located next to them in future. And it basically looks like 4 graves together with, what do we decide, 18 feet and then another 4 graves and so on. It's going to be interesting because, again, we might not be able to leave the space we had hoped for. So we will have large strips, essentially, that looks like a mass grave. Which is going to be challenging.
Yeah.
Walt here. Herland Forest, we're about 40 miles west of Jody. Last winter, we had almost 3 foot of snow and had 3 interments in the middle of that. So this year, we have just been using this much more mild winter and dealing with our anxieties by digging. And so creating just steadily going on, whether we have someone intended, what we call guardians or not, we've just been digging graves and continuing to do so. So that's our strategy to kind of have an advance and go forward. We have our first interment tomorrow morning from someone who has died in this. So we're kind of interested in that. And our policy again is, and we're just doing it in-house, no one there, with the understanding that we have a 40-acre campground adjacent to our cemetery. And we're encouraging people to think in terms of having a camp out, a vigil, a celebration, etc., as soon as conditions relax and people can be more comfortable. Because right now we figure there's too much anxiety everywhere around to do this. And so that's kind of our approach to it.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Walt, because I think that's an important thing. I meant to say that earlier, but that's an important thing to reiterate to people, of course, is that we encourage celebrations of life at the gravesite when we're on the other side of the pandemic. How many, you said you're digging. Do you have sorry, the sound is weird. Do you have a target number of graves that you want to complete? Just curious.
No, it's just a matter of we do it, like I said, it's more of an anxiety medication for us. It's out there doing something, because you feel so helpless in the middle of all of this. And, there's a saying in mental health that motion is medicine. And so,
Yeah.
And a lot of our concern is to take care of the people doing the work. And one of the things that we're excited about, planting gardens, and we're going to have baby goats in any moment, etc. And so that's kind of our self-care for our people approach.
Awesome. So we have about a couple minutes left on this topic. I did want to, does that sound weird to you guys too? You hear it? It sounds weird, right? Okay, it went away.
It's fine. Just keep going.
We said, Ren wrote, in Spain, apparently they are putting bodies in an ice rink to keep them cold because they are running out of space. In the video that Caitlin Doty put out, and we'll make sure to share that with everyone because it really does address the mass grave issue well, is that when there are natural disasters, they have a methodical process for keeping the body cold for a long time, tagging each person, storing them, keeping them. And that what she said is, she says it's incredibly unlikely. It's hard for her to imagine that we're going to get to a situation where we're going to have to end up doing mass graves. I'm not going to try to like say what she said because she said it so well, so I'll share it with you all. But it was an incredible relief to watch the video because that's like her expertise, you know, is corpses. And so I found that really reassuring, and you probably will too. And I'm going to personally watch that and kind of find a way again to put that on the page we're going to publish just to address that fear. Before we transition to the last topic, does anyone have any other things that they want to add to this topic?
Yeah, just if I may, again, Jay Lyons here. We were talking about this today, that if it would come down, if you're at the point that you're willing to tolerate something like a mini excavator, at that point, you don't need to do the drastic solutions of assigning graves or mass graves, because the truth is that you, in all likelihood, could dig a single individual grave over here, then over there, then over there, right? You know, however you had to do it, in a very expedient way. And so, you know, culturally with all of us, it would be a very big change to bring a machine like that on site. But it could be that it's the least of all evil, so to speak, where you don't need to deal with assigning, you know, people who pre-need bought and now you're telling them that they can't be there, or you don't have the issue of not having a spot next to the spouse, you know, next to the spouse potentially. So all that could be done away with, where you can go to your normal methodology of people select the plot where they want, they reserve it for their spouse next to them, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have any type of mass grave, and then just the one big pill to swallow is the mini excavator on site.
Thank you. That's actually helpful to hear that. Yeah, Freddie?
Yeah, I've been thinking in terms of a way to sort of keep track on the possibilities of these things we're talking about. And I'm not actually doing this yet, except in my head, but if you ask the question, and Lee can probably actually give us something pretty close, or maybe somebody else can, but the question in my mind is a percentage of, there's two things really. One is, as Lee have already mentioned, a lot of people that might choose burial in the current situation are going to choose cremation. Whether or not they're buying that story, or whether they just themselves decide that it's not worth it to them and they're going to do that. So that is going to be a percentage of COVID-19 deaths that normally wouldn't go to cremation. I think they will go to cremation. However, what I was thinking is if you know the area that you serve as a cemetery, and you track every week or 2 weeks or whatever time period you want, the number of COVID deaths in that territory, and then ask yourself what percentage for a natural burial at our cemetery is going to be of that number. If it's like 200 COVID deaths in your 200-mile radius, just for example, then in my view, there's no way we're going to have more than 2% of those 200 deaths, which is four extra burials. So I'm just suggesting that there's a way to sort of keep track of that, if you can follow, for whatever's appropriate in your area, the number of COVID-19 deaths. Does that make sense at all?
It does. And Jody, you look like you have something to add to that.
Yeah, this I think it's correlative a little bit, Freddie, to what you're talking about with whether people are gonna be moved by fear and simplicity to go toward cremation at this time. We also, as a nonprofit organization, we're really thinking about the economic impacts on our communities, and developed some tiered pricing this last week to be able to offer to Goldendale is not a rich place by any stretch of the imagination, our nearest town. So to be able to offer to families who are dealing with just the death that is already occurring. A little bit of financial assistance there. And then families that are dealing with COVID, a little bit of financial assistance there. And then the opportunity for families who want to purchase community support, sort of like a CSA, if you will, but to give a little bit extra, whether that's the cost, what our current burial open and close fee is, or just as a way for folks to consider donating toward at this time. So just to put that out there, that there are many systems collapsing right now, and economically, people are impacted. And burial and cremation, one of the primary distinctions there is that simplicity seems to be the financial piece. So,
Could I talk about the cremation issue?
Before we do, I think there's some folks who need to mute their phone, if you wouldn't mind doing that. Yes, I think doing fundraisers and other things, we've also had that same thought. A lot of people, as you know, millions have, filed for unemployment. So thinking about ways to raise money for people who can't afford a burial. And we're a little bit over on this topic. So with any other question, if you'll please type it into the chat screen. And again, we're going to compile all those questions and come back to them. So we're going to move on to the last topic, which is creative ways to create ritual and meaning. So, one of the things that we've thought about offering during a burial is doing either a video recording, putting up a tripod so that no one's having to man it, so everyone could really be present in the experience. And having someone's smartphone, there are little adapters you can use for smartphones to put on a tripod. Somebody in the CBA call recently mentioned live streaming. So there's lots of different ideas, and I actually would love to hear from you all, because I think this is an area where creativity is really important. Like, how can we create a sense of connection and meaning and presence when we're having to maintain 6 feet from each other, or in a situation where no family is allowed to be present. Love to hear your guys' thoughts and ideas.
So, Andrea here, in my experience, never mind. I'm sorry, I live on a mountain and I have lots of feedback. I'm sorry I can't be present online. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What I've been mostly contacted, I'm not a funeral director, I'm a full spectrum doula, and what I've been, bless you, what I've been most people right now are talking to me about how, like, now they want to talk about their advanced care planning, big time. And I'm having trouble facilitating all of their wishes, especially now hearing about, this mass or what I'd like to call communal burial. So I need creative ways to remove the fear for folks as a doula to support you guys. You know what I mean? Like the ones that are doing that part of the work, if that makes sense. But mostly, most folks are just wanting to know how they can do it, and if it happens, if someone's going to take care of them, is the fear that I have been hearing the most. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just trying to remove the fear. Like, I loved hearing that earlier, because it is what it is, but it is heavy. I hope that makes sense, but all I'm doing is listening to people and writing things down and then emailing it back to them so that they can share that with their families. And that's all I really know how to do.
I think I have resources that I can also share, but I think Sarah Williams, I saw you raise your hand. Would you sounds like you had some things, and maybe we can learn more about processes just from listening to other ideas.
Well, besides the obvious, which you've mentioned, the live streaming, the coming out with a tripod and using your iPhone to record, one of the most moving things I saw, and I'm sure Lee and Ann Weston already know about this. If you see me holding my hand on this paper, and if you can imagine tracing your hand and taking that piece of paper and writing prayers or wishes or a favorite poem to either bring to the service, or if they're having a home funeral, to take it to the family. That to me just, I thought that was so, it was so simple, it just blew my mind.
And usually the most simplest things is what does it. And what I love in this time right now, to be honest with you, I find a lot of beauty as well. Like people are talking about things, and I think that's good. You know, I feel that's good. And however, I just thank you for that the fingers. I love that. That's beautiful.
I wish
Beautiful.
you could see me. I can just see you I just see your phone. But it was,
I'm so sorry.
You just do your handprint and trace it.
Yeah.
And you can do, I mean, you could just elaborate on how to go further with that.
Oh, I've already done one for myself. I'm going to do that, show other people.
Susan, I see
That's how I get it done. Thank you for that. Because that's it. I appreciate it.
I have a couple of things to share. So my name is Donna Baker, and I'm a death doula. I'm the founder of the Columbus Community Death Care here in Ohio. And I have a lot of clients. Hi. So I have a lot of clients who have been asking me similar questions, and I've sort of broken it down into what I think are three things. First of all, I tell people to ask themselves, what does paying respects mean to you? You know, we have to really stop and think about what it is that we're doing when we come into a funeral, when we support someone at the graveside, when we are saying goodbye to the people that we love. As a doula right now, I'm not able to see my hospice clients because we're all banned from being in those positions. So a lot of my clients are dying alone. So I'm always talking I'm always talking to people about, you know, rethinking and reimagining death and reimagining dying. And so the first question I have them ask themselves is, what does it really mean to pay respects? And then from that answer, you know, I've come up with a couple of steps. One thing is I just encourage people to let go and try to let the bodies of their loved ones go, even though it's incredibly difficult. But I do some work with them to try to help them understand that the honoring of this person doesn't have to happen right now, and it can happen later. They can say goodbye and let go of the body now, and then in a few months they can hold a service. But people don't often want to do that. We're a nation of wanting what we want and wanting it now. And so I have come up with two things that I suggest. One thing is for people who are comfortable in the virtual world to consider some sort of virtual altar or some sort of virtual space that they can create that friends and family can come back to across the years. If it's a Instagram account or a Facebook page, or even if they put together a website, people can dump all their stories and their poems and their music and their videos, their photos. You can get back on there on the decedent's birthday and you know, make a wish or say a prayer. And then the other thing is to, if they're not into that, or if they don't really have access to that, or if that doesn't feel moving to them, I'm encouraging families to create spaces within their own homes. So regardless of what their spiritual preference is, if you can just have a tiny space that's altar-ish. So if that's, your mantle, or a space in your kitchen, or a desk in your sunroom, and you can just gather stuff from that person, collect it, photos, candles, just all this stuff, the meaningful stuff, and have a place that you can at least go to and visit now while you're not able to either be with that person, be with their body, or be with your family members, and, give everyone the big hug that we all wish we had at these times. Just try to create your own space, either in your own home or virtually for now.
That's great. I'm going to share one thing real quick, and then Jody, I'm going to do it to you. I had somebody whose daughter is buried with us, and they were going to come out on her birthday, and then because of the traveling restrictions, they weren't able to do it. So what I asked them was if they had something that they wanted me to read. And so I went and I took flowers to her gravesite for them. I took a picture and a video of it, and then I auto-recorded myself reading their message of love, and I sent that to them. And then I spoke to another family on Thursday of last week whose mom was going into surgery. She has a spot reserved with us, and she's at risk. And I said, worst case scenario, if for whatever reason you all can't be with us, what we would probably do, or if it's only 5 people, is have the folks who can't be present write their letters of love, and we can read those and we can put those in the grave with the person. So in terms of the burial process for folks who can't be present, I think that being able to share those words of love, like Sarah was, trace the hand, something. And again, I'm going to share an awesome thing I read earlier today from the Order of the Good Day. A lot of, honestly, wonderful tips about how to create ritual meaning. Jody?
Yeah, I want to echo everything you just said, Cassie, offering to be surrogate, if you will, and to carry those things forward, I think has been definitely, as a professional, a way to be responsive to families during this time. As a personal, someone who lost a dear one to suicide last fall, and have been trying to navigate how to memorialize her during this time. We still have not had the big gathering where everybody brings potluck and etc. She was someone who loved to feed people. So what's ended up happening for us is that her Facebook page has become a place for people to share playlist suggestions and to just feed into this virtual. Her name was Jill, and the other thing that's happened is a sort of Dear Jill thread, both on her Facebook page and in smaller text threads between friends who knew her. So I've been thinking a lot about clean grief and dirty grief lately, and suicide brings up dirty grief a lot of times. But I think what we're facing with the coronavirus is also this can't do the beautiful momentum forward gathering all in things, so it splinters in us a little bit more. And being able to identify a number of people who share a circle with her, and where we can just text, "Dear Jill, this really random messed up thing happened today and I wish you were here." That has been that's been a way to collectively grieve together in some of that murkier water. So I think folks right now are not, when we're not allowed those avenues of maybe more healing and traditional closure, may need to resort to some of the fringe closure, which has its own gifts to it. I've been really kind of blown away by what people are feeling comfortable sharing on a Facebook page at this point.
Yeah, everything's kind of out there right now. That's for sure. Listen, we're coming up on our time, so I'm sorry to short people a little bit. I did want to have Pete McQuillan jump in here. He had one last thing to say. Pete, you want to go ahead? think I've got him. Nope, here we go. There you go. Go ahead, Pete. Start over.
Okay. People are thinking that because cremation's cheaper, they're going to go that option and not go to burial. But actually, crematories are a fixed asset, and very quickly they will become full. And I've talked to crematory operators here, and the only option is going to be burial. So you're going to get more burials and not less because of cremation.
Thank you, Pete. You know what? I'm really glad you said that, because I learned just yesterday in all of this business that New York City is 6 days out on cremations right now.
Wow.
Okay, so that's pretty big deal.
And they're still on the upward climb.
Yeah, and we're not even started, so.
Great.
Okay, listen, we've got to get going. So on behalf of Ed Bixby, I'm Lee Webster. I had to come in separately. But thank you so much for coming. We're going to be putting resources up on that webpage. We'll send that to you along with any other questions that came up here. I think we addressed almost everything, so we did pretty darn good. Thanks to all of you for helping, and thanks to Cassie specifically for leading us through this exercise tonight. We can always do this again, so let me know if you'd like us to host another call. We're happy to do it. Thanks very much, and off we go. I always like to unmute ourselves for this one so we can have a great big goodbye. Go ahead.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will.
Bye-bye.
I'm calling you, Jody.
Hi, India.
I'm calling you right now.